Today, we're unpacking a truly radical proposition in modern neuroscience. You know how we always hear the brain is just a biological machine, a bunch of circuits and signals? Well, what if it actually operates quite literally like a resonant musical instrument? That's right, the physics of sound and the firing of your neurons are about to collide in a pretty spectacular way. Let's jump right into this explainer.
So what if your brain isn't a computer at all, but a musical instrument? I mean, we're so used to that traditional model, right? The brain is a cold, calculating machine. But that might be completely missing the deeper physics of the mind. Every physical structure in the universe has natural vibrations. So what if consciousness itself is fundamentally musical? What if every thought you have is actually a chord?
Now, this isn't just some out-of-the-blue idea. It's actually an ancient intuition that has finally found its mathematical proof. Way back in ancient Greece, Pythagoras proposed that reality is fundamentally musical, built entirely on harmony. For centuries, that was pretty much just poetry. Fast forward to the 18th century, and Ernst Chladni actually visualizes these resonant frequencies. But the massive leap happens in 2016, when neuroscientist Selen Atasoy successfully computes the harmonic waves of the human brain. We've literally moved from ancient philosophy straight into cutting-edge neuroimaging.
Let's look a little closer at that 18th century breakthrough, because it perfectly sets up the physics we need. Ernst Chladni would take these metal plates, sprinkle them with sand, and literally play them with a violin bow, and the results were wild. The grains of sand would leap up and settle into these intricate, symmetrical, geometric patterns. They just naturally gathered along the still lines of the plate. See, the shapes weren't forced onto the sand. They were the plate expressing its own latent harmonics. This is a universal rule of physics. Any physical object, whether it's a guitar string or a bell, has natural ways it vibrates based strictly on its shape.
And that brings us to our core concept for today, Connectome Harmonics. These are the natural standing wave vibrational patterns of your brain, and they are shaped entirely by its physical wiring map. Just like a guitar string is constrained by its length and its tension, your brain is constrained by that vast map of white matter connections linking every region together, your connectome. That physical wiring dictates exactly how your neural activity is mathematically allowed to vibrate.
Selen Atasoy's 2016 insight basically breaks down into 3 logical steps. Step 1, the brain has physical wiring. Step 2, this wiring dictates the brain's effective shape and structure. And step 3, that structure dictates its fundamental resonant frequencies. By applying the math of harmonics to the connectome, her team discovered something incredible. Those familiar resting state networks that neuroscientists have spent decades mapping, they actually emerge entirely naturally as these fundamental wave patterns.
Which leads to this absolutely elegant metaphor. Any brain state is a chord, a specific combination of these harmonics, each contributing its own pure tone. Think about what that actually means. Your brain's activity is essentially a superposition of fundamental vibrational modes. Every single moment of your human experience, every memory, every emotion, it's a specific musical chord struck from the architecture of your mind.
Section 1. Playing the psychedelic keyboard, the 2017 LSD brain scans.
So if the brain is an instrument, what happens when you completely alter how it's played? Atasoy's team took this harmonic framework and applied it to fMRI scans of people on LSD. They were essentially trying to read an altered state of consciousness as sheet music. In ordinary everyday life, we play a pretty limited, familiar repertoire of low-frequency chords. It's efficient, sure, but it's constrained. But under LSD, the brain suddenly reaches for the whole keyboard, adding these high-frequency, highly complex overtones. It's this stunning mathematical portrait of a mind whose expressive range has just radically widened. The data gave them a totally clean, quantitative signature of this altered state. First off, the total energy of the brain's harmonics rose significantly. The instrument was literally being played far more powerfully. Second, the overall repertoire of active harmonics expanded. And third, those normally quiet, high-frequency modes, they were suddenly activated. We're talking about intricate, delicate patterns of brain activity that usually lie completely dormant during our waking hours.
Section 2. The Edge of Chaos, Finding the Critical Balance.
But you might be wondering, what does activating all these new frequencies actually do to the brain's stability? Well, these harmonics help us map exactly where the brain sits on a spectrum of order and chaos. At one extreme, you've got rigid order. That's a state that is locked, predictable, completely frozen. At the other extreme, pure chaos. just totally random, uncorrelated noise. But right in the middle is this really special regime physicists call criticality, or the edge of chaos. This is that poised boundary where a system is maximally flexible and incredibly sensitive. A healthy waking brain naturally hovers near this middle point because, honestly, it's the absolute sweet spot for processing information.
And the most profound finding of that 2017 study was exactly how psychedelics interact with this balance. The fMRI scans showed that LSD pushes the brain's harmonic activity directly toward this critical edge of chaos. The brain doesn't just completely devolve into random noise, right? Instead, the state self-organizes exactly at the razor-thin boundary between order and disorder.
This actually reveals a massive convergence in modern neuroscience. On one side, we have Connectome Harmonics. On the other, the completely independent entropic brain hypothesis. The entropic brain hypothesis uses thermodynamics to suggest psychedelics raise the brain to a more critical state. Connectome Harmonics, on the other hand, uses the physics of resonance and standing waves. These are two totally different mathematical lenses, and yet they are pointing perfectly at the exact same phenomenon: the brain moving to the edge where it is most alive and most capable of novel configurations.
Okay, but how does this all connect back to you and the actual subjective experience? Let's reframe things using this math. People on psychedelics often report ego dissolution, that profound feeling of the self dissolving. Well, in this harmonic language, the self might just be one habitual chord your brain plays every single day. Loosen that chord, add higher harmonics, and the music just opens up. The same goes for the loosening of the default mode network. All of these profound subjective feelings are simply shifts in whole brain resonance.
Section 3. The Science and Its Limits, and Honest Caution.
As breathtaking as this framework is, to be truly informed, we absolutely have to acknowledge its boundaries impartially. First off, this is a very young model, and it's built on simplifying assumptions about how to translate white matter wiring into mathematical harmonics. Second, it currently relies on a modest number of participant fMRI scans, so it definitely awaits broad replication with other compounds. But most importantly, it is a beautiful measuring instrument, not a metaphysical proof. The math is exact, and those enriched harmonics are empirical facts. But this doesn't definitively answer the ultimate philosophical nature of consciousness. We are beautifully measuring the mind, but we definitely aren't claiming we've solved the cosmos.
So, I'll leave you with this. If the mind has a music, and if for a few hours a molecule can open up the entire keyboard, what else is our instrument capable of playing? It completely changes how we view the biology inside our own heads, turning rigid machinery into a resonant symphony. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep seeking those structural truths, and I will see you next time.